so no worries. Yeah, for sure.
So Governor Walker, can you just tell us the nature of your visit today and what occurred?
Yeah, we wanted to follow up. We've been having ongoing discussions really for the past month and a half with local officials, with folks in the timber industry and others. Today was really just a chance not only to come back and tour the site, update some of the pictures we had seen and reviewed, but to look specifically in terms of spending a couple hours in the morning speaking with representatives of the timber industry, a couple hours this afternoon talking with local government officials. Really, because this is a very unique occurrence. This is much different in many ways than just, you look back to Siren a decade ago with a tornado, obviously very important. You look at the, not only a tornado, but a flood. But in this case, you've got a unique experience where you've got a major area. It's a wind blow, much like we haven't seen since 1977 back on July 4th. And so we want to make sure we do this in a way that not only helps the community and the region clean up, but ultimately does so in a way that doesn't hurt the timber industry. It's important to this region. It's important to the state. And so that's where the meetings themselves were real helpful. It gave us specifics about what we needed to do to help local government, certainly challenges in terms of towns and the counties and the regions, dealing with road aids, dealing with the potential, at least temporarily, weight limits that might be adjusted to allow timber to come in and out, to clear these areas both off of public access points in terms of clearance along the roads, but also in terms of private property and making sure we could account for that. We want to do it in a way, but again, in a way that doesn't negatively impact the marketplace and the timber industry.
Does your experience here today change your perception of the Disaster Relief Fund?
Well, in our case, the Disaster Relief Fund, we funded, as Senator Jauch mentioned, we fully funded at $1 million as has been in the past. We're going to look for ways, though, it's a 70-30 mix, but I think particularly for a number of the town governments where there's some real challenges, we're going to look for ways to augment that because they're going to be tapped into that and some, and figure out some ways that we can not only take funds from the Wisconsin Disaster Fund, but also transportation dollars, help provide assistance, particularly if we identify roads that we want to use for logging to bring product in and out and help them offset the damage that during that temporary period might apply to those roads, both town and county roads. So I think it's going to be a piecing together a package. We've got, I think, a concept that's going to work well, assuming the Department of Defense does it, clearing right-of-ways with the National Guard. We've got the 724s, one of the premier engineering units in the country. On top of that, then we can augment disaster relief funds, and we can take that and put transportation funds together and provide a real long-term solution.
Okay. I interviewed Myron Schuster, chairman of the Northwest Regional Planning Commission, on Monday, and he said he was proposing an idea of low interest rate loans to end users like mills to keep them buying the timber so the loggers keep on bringing it out. What's the feasibility of that idea?
We went through about 5 or 6 different options like that today, and part of it was asking the timber industry as well as local governments the feedback on some of those options. So it's one of those where a number of those ideas, we threw out a multitude of ideas, some of which have just been one person or group bringing up, others have been a variety. Feedback-wise, is if that's an option that would be doable, we'd be interested in pursuing it. Part of it's getting the feedback, though. Is that really what's stopping them, or is it, for example, on a short-term basis, temporarily trying to pursue larger markets outside of this region, even on a global basis? Could we get the timber out that way? That might be another viable option as well. But the key is, you've got an industry you don't want to have a negative impact on. You've got even, you take the loggers and they move it on, you've even got hardwood, you've got pulp, and you've got energy uses, all of which have very different needs when it comes to the timber available. And so we want to make sure we don't negatively affect any of those.
Governor, you mentioned working with DOD.
Yeah.
What type of clearance do you have to get, or what is it you're actually looking for from them?
Well, the sign-off is essentially on the federal funds. There's training funds available right now. I mean, it's a perfect synergy. General Dunbar and his team did a great job coming up with this, because the engineering unit we're talking about, the 724, has to do ongoing training to stay updated and to stay apart. They just came back from being deployed earlier this year in March. And so this fits that bill, at least according to what we've looked at. The Department of Defense ultimately has to sign off on that, but that's something we feel relatively confident. Obviously, nothing will happen until they completely sign off on it. But that should be, I think our feedback has been relatively positive.
And what the Defense Department is looking for is local support, which we have, state support, which the governor has, and we do things like a 10-day notice to make sure there's no objections out there in the community, and we do an environmental impact study. All that's ongoing, and I share the governor's confidence that this lines up very well and it's valuable training and can really help the local community.
So we'll be able to use a chunk of federal dollars then for the 724 to do the work, correct?
Correct, and when you say chunk of federal dollars, we get an allocation for training every year, and this is just normal allocation of training dollars that we would put to this particular project.
All federal.
It would be all federal.
Because these are not federal dollars for disasters. These are dollars for training for the Guard. It just so happens that it's, again, one of the blessings of having the 724 with their unique expertise in engineering. This fits the bill in terms of their training.
So would they be working when they do their weekend drill, or would it be like a sustained two-week a month effort, or what are you envisioning?
We have weekend drills, and we also have what we call annual training. So we have up to 15 days of annual training. We'd be bringing them on annual training. So for up to 25 days, it would be different guardsmen for different periods of time. But for up to 25 days is what we estimate for this project, and it would be funded by training dollars. So as long as it took us.
Yeah, we've got to run through the time for maybe one or two more quick ones already.
Quick.
Governor, I came late. Did you decide on any hard course of action, or are these all things that are still in the
No, I said to all the folks, the local officials today, we'll do a debriefing after this by early next week. That's why we got their contact information, emails. We'll be letting them know. What I think we'll ultimately end up looking at realistically is a package of things, which we think is likely if the Guard action is possible. That helps right-of-ways, which is incredibly important for safety, for fire hazard, and just for public safety along the roadways. It offsets some of the costs that locals would otherwise have to pay for that. I think it's a combination of the disaster relief fund and some funds we can move in terms of transportation to offset the cost and the burden on the county trunk roads and the town roads. And so we're going to debrief and look at the specifics, but I'm confident we can put together a good package that'll help them, because this is a very unique circumstance. It's something that's going to put an incredible amount of pressure on a very rural part of the state that's heavily dependent on this industry. We want to make sure it works out right.
Thanks.
Governor, there's also really concern about all those trees in our forest, 130 acres, and the potential fire hazard. And I've been talking to some loggers, and they said, there really isn't a big window to get those logs out as far as their usefulness.
Yep.
And there's a real urgency to get in there right now, even before the freeze up.
That's partly definitely what we talked about at both the timber industry meeting earlier today and then the local government meeting. It's one of the reasons the value of the Guard coming in to free up the right-of-ways is because then you get loggers going to private property, which the Guard wouldn't be doing, because there's just a limited number of loggers out there.
Right.
And that's part of what a few weeks back I called the mills in the state to talk about access. And one of the challenges was just having enough bodies to come in. It's part of what initiated the option of looking at the 724. So this is a perfect auction to provide some more relief.
When do we, if the 724 is used, when would we might see those guys
Assuming the Defense Department approves it, we expect to start in early September.
Early September?
And conclude by the end of September.
Okay. Thank you.